We're going blue on Locked On Hornets. I've got Isaiah Hull, the host of Locked On Wolverines, on to talk about Yaxel and Adai and Merez. We're going to get into all the prospects today on Locked On Hornets. Let's get it.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
Welcome into Locked On Hornets. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. I'm Doug Branson. You can follow my work on every Hornets box score. In for Walker Mail today is the great Isaiah Hull, host of the Locked On Wolverines podcast. He is in to talk about all things Wolverines basketball because there are three prospects that are right in range for the Charlotte Hornets, and we are going to get into each of those players. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app to create an account and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Isaiah, thank you so much for joining me today. What has it been like to cover three players that all could go in the NBA lottery?
I mean, it's been somewhat surreal, covering this team in general. And I kind of wish I covered the team as hard as I did back in the John Beeline days where I was at every single press conference interviewing every single player. And I don't do that as much. But I mean, I still covered every game and got to see these guys and was at some of the press conferences. And even that was just kind of wild just to see these guys that, none of them were on the team last year. And now they're all national champions and pretty close to being lottery picks.
Man, you bring up such a good point there. Because of all of the changes to college basketball, because we've been covering the draft a long time here on this show, and I'd have you on, I'd have other people on to talk about these prospects, and you had 2, 3, a couple of years sometimes to feel these players out at least. But now with the transfer portal being the way it is, it's a pretty crazy thing. We're going to get into all three of the prospects individually, but before we do that, I am going to do the thing that I'm sure guests hate a lot, which is I'm going to make you pick your favorite. I want to know I'm going to put you in the role of GM, NBA GM, okay? And you've got all three of these players, Aday Mara, Morez, and Yaxel Lendeborg. If you have all three of these guys at the top of your draft board, and they're all available to you with whatever pick, which of these players are you taking?
I mean, it's a no-brainer for me. It's Yaxel Lendeborg. I mean, he's a guy that can do a little bit of everything at an extremely high level, right? So he's what? I can't remember his height. It's 6'8", 6'9", 6'10", somewhere around there. And he can run the floor like a point guard. He can be a big man for you. He tends to be, for Michigan, he was mostly the wing player. So he's just kind of able to do everything. And on top of it, he's got the personality to match. He kind of has a little bit of a personality that I think that rivals don't really like him. But I would find it hard if I was a rival to hate him as well. I just think that a lot of people get blinded by the maize and blue and all of that. But he's just got such an effusive personality. He's fun to be around. I've had a couple moments with him, and I just think he's a great dude. But on the court, I mean, he's dominant, right? He can completely take over a game. I think that the one knock on Yaxel, and I'm sure we're going to get into him more, but I think the one knock on him is that he kind of demurred a little bit, which was generally what Dusty May asked from his players, be a team guy. But from Yaxel, he's bro, I didn't bring you here to just be, I brought you here to be one of 5, but I also brought you here to be one of 1. And sometimes you kind of just get out of it. And I think that if he asserts himself more, then the sky is just the absolute limit for him.
Well, he said that in one of the press conferences that he gave during the combine, he said that he had grown a lot on and off the floor, and maybe alluded to a little bit of immaturity in years past. But from a in-game perspective and an off-the-floor perspective, did you see that at Michigan there? Did he grow? Because he's an older player, and so the knock on the older players is always, well, this guy's a finished product. The ceiling, we already see the ceiling. But do you see a player that grew and could continue to grow if he were drafted by the Charlotte Hornets?
I mean, absolutely. You definitely saw, like, kind of to the point of, yeah, he would disappear a little bit more earlier in the year. And then you just saw him kind of try to find and strike a balance, right? Like, he's a great teammate. I think that's one of the things that when you look at a star player like that, you don't necessarily in college think like, well, that guy's a great teammate. The big thing for him was to learn how to have the mixture of delegating and leading. And I think you saw him really stepping up as a leader, but probably about by mid-season. As far as off the court, I mean, he was still kind of a goofball. I mean, he still had some moments where he was trolling some people, but it wasn't as egregious as, say, like, he had a preseason clip where he was talking down Purdue, and that went viral right before they played. And but like by the end of the year, while he still had some moments that were still where he was outspoken and what have you, I mean, it was a lot more mature, like you say, like it's just a lot more just understanding like what you can and can't do. I mean, even when he made the I can't even remember who he made it about now. It was in the, I think, the Big Ten tournament or the NCAA tournament early in. He even looked at Dusty May before he made his comment, just to kind of be like, are you okay if I go ahead and say something a little outrageous right now? So you have at least seen him kind of take a moment, recognize, okay, I've got to be better. He had a couple learning moments over the course of the year. And I just think, like, when you're going from JUCO to UAB to Michigan, that's a big change, right? Like, you aren't, you can dominate all you want at UAB. No one's really going to pay attention to you. You can say whatever you want at UAB. No one's really going to pay attention to you. You come to Michigan, I think it's a little bit different because the spotlight's on you. And I just don't think he was used to that. And I think he eventually learned, okay, yeah, I can't just go and say and do whatever I want.
When I look at the numbers on Yaxel and I look at the tape, particularly in the last year, you mentioned like he wasn't, there were times where he could have been a little bit more assertive, but I also, on the flip side of that, I didn't see a guy who hurt his team a lot. Is that a fair evaluation? Like, he's a guy that does a little bit of everything and doesn't hurt you, maybe not spectacular, but is not going to hurt the team.
Yeah, I would say that there was not a game in which he didn't have a massive impact, and there likewise were no games that I can think of where it was like, man, if only Yaxel would have, right? Like that, they're
right.
Because even the games where he scored in single digits, which were very few and far between, or like low double digits, like he had a bigger impact than what necessarily the box score had, right? Like because he's also a defensive player. He's a guy that can lock you down defensively. He's a guy that can dish it out and get the assists and do all the things on that front that you want and need him to do. And so I can't recall a game like there were games where he took a lot of shots and he missed a lot of shots where he just wasn't finding it, but he made contributions in other places. Whereas I can say for Adai and more so Morez, Morez had some games where he did hurt the team. And I don't think that Yaxel, of anybody, had that. I think he just generally, it's like, okay, I'm not on offensively. I'm going to find a way to be higher in assists and find guys. I'm going to ramp up my defense, things like that.
Yaxel was the first recipient of one of my draft roses, a player that I would love to see in a Charlotte Hornets uniform. And Isaiah, I'm going to be honest with you. You haven't said anything here that would make me, keep my receipt on that rose and turn it in and get it back. There's a lot of Hornets DNA that I hear in there. And later on in the show, I will tell you all about Hornets DNA, and I will see if all or one or a couple of these guys fall into that category. That's coming up. Plus, coming up, bees everywhere. You heard Isaiah mention him there, Merez. I know a lot of Hornets fans are excited about Morez Johnson Jr. as a prospect, but could there be something in the tape that Isaiah saw that could maybe mean that the Hornets need to look away? We'll talk about that and more coming up on Locked On Hornets. Today's episode of Locked On Hornets is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time! There is nothing like playoff basketball live. The intensity, the crowd, the rivalries create a completely different experience when you are in the building. The NBA playoffs are where unforgettable moments happen, and being there in person, it just hits different, let's be honest. Game Time makes it incredibly easy to find tickets even for those hard-to-get playoff games in just a few taps. With the Game Time guarantee, you know you're getting 100% authentic tickets on time and at the best price. Great seats can be found in just a couple of minutes. One of the great features that I really love is that the price you see is the price you pay. Fees are included, so there are no surprises at checkout. The seat view feature is also a game changer, so that you can see what you're going to see when you make your purchase. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account and redeem code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. This episode is also brought to you by DoorDash. The postseason is heating up, and DoorDash has a way to keep fans in their bag the whole way through. Whether the highlights are being watched, the tunnel fits, they're analyzed. We used to do a segment on this show called Fire or Fizzle, where we would look at those tunnel fits. So if you're one of those people, if you're just following your favorite player, the entire season is made more fun with DoorDash. Every player has their bag, and with DoorDash, fans have one too. Snacks can be stocked, gear can be kept fresh, and watch party vibes can be kept absolutely on point. On those nights when the team is causing stress, DoorDash can be utilized as post-game therapy. Sometimes dessert is just needed right now when your team's losing. If late-night interviews hit and chips are suddenly required at midnight, DoorDash is built exactly for that. Even if the group chat says pull up, you can show up prepared with snacks, cups, and even a phone charger. From tip-off to overtime, stay in your bag and order on DoorDash. Get snacks, drinks, gear, whatever gets you through the season delivered right to your door. DoorDash, in your bag all season long. More from Isaiah Hull of Locked On Wolverines coming up. Back here on Locked On Hornets with Isaiah Hull, the host of Locked On Wolverines. So we were talking about the fact that Yaxel Lendeborg really didn't hurt his team. You couldn't point to a game and go, man, that Yaxel, he really blew it for us on that game. But maybe the next guy that we want to talk about here, Morez Johnson Jr., did do that. What made you say that? Can you point to a particular game or a particular moment that stands out that you go, man, maybe second guess Morez a little bit?
Yeah, there were a few. He kind of late down the stretch in the regular season, he wasn't quite himself. And then while he had some good games starting in the Big Ten tournament, I believe it was the Purdue game, where he just not only disappeared, just had a lot of turnovers, right? Like he just had games where it was like he just wasn't really there. And then it just seemed like when he was there, he was just not in the right position. Maybe he was just trying to do a little too much. Like he's turning the ball over a lot. And you saw that in a couple of stretches in both the Big Ten tournament as well as the NCAA tournament, where it just you would expect him to get like at least like 12 to 15 points, if not closer to 20, and somewhere between 5 and 10 rebounds a game. And there'd just be games where it's like, yeah, Merez did nothing, but turned the ball over. I believe it was that Purdue game. I think I might be misremembering. They all like the problem with covering basketball compared to football is they just a lot of games comparatively. So I can't necessarily remember them all straight away, but I think it was that Purdue game where he had like a turnover on the last inbound. Michigan's still in a spot where it could win, and he was just kind of careless. And I think that was kind of where it was like I think a lot of Michigan fans were looking at it and saying he might be a one more year guy, until everyone started kind of seeing his measurables and the fact that he's able to dominate a game, right? He isn't just what I'm saying about when he would mess up. Those are moments that are essentially few and far between, even if it's a couple games in a row, because he'll have a couple of those games. And then before you know it, like the next game, the first 10 points come from him, right? Like he's the only guy that can do anything, because playing that forward position for Michigan, I mean, he played like a center generally. but he wasn't the center, and that gave him a lot of freedom to do some different things. And he can shoot as well. Now he's mostly a down low player, but he is a guy who can shoot. You know, if he goes to the free throw line, he's probably, I mean, he's not a liability there. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, he had moments where it was just like, I don't know where he is or what he's doing, and it's very confusing because the last 4 games he was my player of the game. And so I'm not really sure why he just seems to kind of disappear or make copious amounts of mistakes in some big games. But then there's just other games like he returns to Illinois and they're taunting him like crazy, the fans there, and he dominated the first half. But I think that's the other side of the coin too, is sometimes you'll see him dominate one half or the other, and then the other half he just is non-existent as well. So I just want to see more consistency from him and less turnovers. If he's able to find that consistency, able to not have just spotty, sporadic mistakes like he ends up having, I think he would just be a lot better off. But I mean, he was going to be the player I thought would be the centerpiece of this next team if he came back. And now it doesn't look like there's any chance that he comes back.
Yeah, you mentioned the measurable 6'9", 250 pounds, the standing reach, the wingspan. It's all eye-popping stuff. But then you're right. I mean, you dig into the numbers a little bit, and there was some inconsistency. There were dominant nights. You mentioned the Illinois game where he had a double-double, 19 points, 11 rebounds, and games earlier in the season against USC, which was a top 25 ranked team. He had 29 points, and then there are games where he would score in the single digits like he did against Alabama, and you mentioned the Purdue game, also a single-digit game for him. And there are some big turnover numbers too. So that's interesting and makes you wonder if it's a player maybe that does fall away from the 14th slot and into the 18th slot. You're not asking a guy that's drafted 18th necessarily to do as much as somebody, and it's weird because it's only 4 places, but that lottery tag does follow you a little bit in terms of, well, you were a lottery pick, that you're going to be asked to do a little bit more. Maybe Morez, if he does fall to the 18, makes more sense there. I'm going to ask this about Adai coming up as well, but you look at the measurables, they are great. They jump off the page. But I think back to when the Hornets were looking at Mark Williams, and those measurables also jumped off the page. And then he got to Charlotte and wouldn't use his body. I'm not going to say couldn't. That seems mean, but at least wouldn't. I just didn't see him use the body in terms of physicality, in terms of I want to hit first. I want to dominate. That just wasn't, for whatever reason, was not in Mark Williams to do that, particularly when he first came in it. And he had to go to Greensboro as a third. I think he was a 15th overall pick, but he had to go to Greensboro for a little while before he came over to the big squad. So I'll ask this about Adai coming up, but about Merez too. Was he able to take all of those physical gifts and assert those on the floor and use those on both ends of the floor to get good looks inside, but also to help his team defensively?
I mean, defensively, that's the one thing you don't have to worry about if you're drafting a Wolverine, is that, I mean, this was the number 1 defense in the country according to Ken Pom, right? These guys all got after it. You never, I mean, they had some stretches, right? You're going to see that in college. We're not talking about the bad boys Pistons here, where it was just good luck getting to 60, that's, I mean, yeah, in college, I guess maybe good luck getting to 60, but generally you weren't necessarily looking at that. Right. But Merez, I think he defensively, I saw very few issues. Where it kind of came to using his body physically, offensively, sometimes I kind of felt like he was doing too much and it would hamper him. And you see that in the NBA too. I was watching my Pistons the other night, and there's just that stretch down the end of the regular before it went to overtime. And it just felt like, okay, you guys are trying to do too much down low, and end up settling for a shot because you're trying to assert yourself bodily, and you're drawing all of these guys and you're not kicking it out, and you're just getting a bad shot. I feel like Morez kind of does that a little bit too much. I think that from a physical standpoint, I mean, he's the one that's going to go to blows out of anybody, right? Like there's no player on the team that like other teams would try to go after him, and whether it's offense or defense, and Merez was the guy that it was like, yeah, you're probably making a little bit of a mistake doing that.
Are you saying there might be a little bit of Jalen Duren in Morez a little bit? Because that's a little bit of that's happening with Jalen right now. And I'm famously on this show, I'm a huge Jalen fan. Wanted the Hornets did draft him technically and then traded the pick away. But yeah, I mean, eventually, if you don't have that control over your offensive game, it will get exposed. I mean, it might take some time, but it will get exposed. So that's really interesting to hear with Merez. Cool. Well, we have one more prospect to go. Aday Mara. I don't even know if he's going to be in the Hornets range. He is rising up draft boards right now, but I want to talk about him anyway because he's huge. So coming up on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
More from Isaiah on Adai, and I will tell Isaiah, I will bore him a little bit with Hornets DNA. It's not boring to us, but to somebody who's not around the organization, we'll find out. It might not be boring. Hornets DNA, I want to talk to him about it, and then I want to see which one of these prospects most is the most, I guess, if it's Hornets DNA, most matches the species of a Hornet. We'll find out coming up. Today's episode of Locked On Hornets is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs, they are here, folks, and every single possession matters. If you're looking to get even closer to the action, FanDuel has a great offer to get you started right now. New customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. That's $5 turned into $150 in bonus bets just for getting started. During the playoffs, everything needed can be found right there in one place. It's all together. It's a beautiful thing. I'm talking stats, trends, matchups. You can check all of those out on the FanDuel app before you make your picks, which makes the whole experience feel easier and a lot more informed. Whether player props are being looked at or your favorite stars are being followed, another level of excitement is added to every single game. It really is an easy app to navigate, making playoff basketball even more engaging from start to finish. If you're looking for overs, I would suggest Isaiah's Cade Cunningham because he's having to do everything right now for the Pistons. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel, play your game. Today's episode is also brought to you by Indeed, sponsored jobs. Workplace chaos, it's real. Deadlines are stacking up. Your inbox is overflowing. And that one critical position that you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure is on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. This platform helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for in terms of skills, experience, location, so you aren't just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post, you actually get the right candidate. To put the scale in perspective, in the minute that I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to worldwide Indeed data. If you're currently hiring, less time can be spent searching and more time can be spent interviewing candidates who can check all your boxes. Spend less time searching, more time actually interviewing candidates who check those boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now. Support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. We're Locked On Hornets ahead. Last segment here on Locked On Hornets. Really quick, want to tell you about the Everydayers Club. Find everything that this show has to offer on the Everydayers Club. You just go to LockedOnHornets.supercast.com. You get an ad-free version of the show. You get a chat. You can chat with other fans of the show. You can chat with us. It's super cool. Discord chat. It's awesome. LockedOnHornets.supercast.com. All right, final segment here on Locked On Hornets. Want to talk about one more prospect from Michigan that could be donning, trading in the blue for the teal and purple, and that is Aday Mara. Isaiah, he's huge. I mean, all of these guys are. We've been talking about Adai, Yaxel, Morez. All these guys are massive, but Adai takes it to another level. I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked about Morez, though. Can he use that big old body?
Well, he's now the reigning Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, and he's he got even better at rumbling down low as the year went on both sides of the court. So I think that like that was kind of what surprised me, because you look at him when he comes, I'm seeing him at Michigan Media Day, and it's like, okay, he's tall, but he's kind of a string bean a little bit, right? And is he going to be able to be physical, or is he just going to get knocked over all the time? And no, he can rumble. He kind of has a little bit of the same issue as Merez sometimes, like where it's just like, bro, how did you miss that layup? Like, especially where it's like you don't even have to leave your feet to touch the basket, right? Like you don't have to do so much. So I think that he got better at just kind of asserting himself a bit more, still kind of struggled down low sometimes in some games. Some teams figured out, like particularly Duke really figured out how to kind of neutralize him. So that might be a problem a little bit in the NBA if he doesn't adapt. But I mean, at the same time, I mean, he was dominant in pretty much any game that mattered for the most part. But yeah, I mean, like defensively, he can get physical, right? Like no one really wanted to come up to him. Eventually, a lot of teams learned that. Like it seemed like, okay, we're going to go after him because we've gone up against other 7-footers, and Adai he's a block machine. Number one, he can really assert himself down low. It's more offensively. I want to see him be just a tad more aggressive and just better at finishing. Because even though he had like really good box score stat lines pretty much throughout the year for the most part, they could have been even higher. Because a lot of these games you're looking and you're seeing like somehow Michigan went 50% in layups. And I'd say about 75% of those usually were Adai missing. But I think one of the things that made his game even better was he developed a little bit more of an outside game. I'm not talking threes necessarily. Like that's more Morez. Morez could hit from deep. Adai started trying. I mean, he didn't, I don't think he tried at all while he was at UCLA, or like, I think he shot once and missed like by a long shot. And by the end of the year, you were kind of like, well, that's kind of maybe he makes it. And free throws in particular is where he made the biggest improvement, because he was a liability. You put him on the free throw line, you're just like, okay, well, that's 2 missed shots coming up. And by the end of the year, like he was making everything. So he really developed in kind of always. So like physically, he surprised me, but there's some of those other aspects of his game that he was able to develop over the course of the year that really, I think, helped put Michigan over the top, because I'm not sure if he's still missing free throws and teams can play hack and a die, I'm not sure that Michigan goes all the way.
Yeah, and that's great, because that shows a level of improvement. Like, and this team is obsessed with players who are obsessed with daily improvement. And it sounds like Adai wasn't ready to settle on like, here's my game, I'm just going to bring it to Michigan and hope it all works out. No, there were continued improvements. So that sounds great. One concern I have about Adai is so in the last draft, the Hornets took Ryan Kalkbrenner out of Creighton, and 7-footer, great shot blocker, but struggles with foot speed, and he got exposed. Probably played a lot of minutes for a second round rookie and held his own really well. But there were moments, particularly in the back half of the year, where he was just getting constantly exposed on defense, and they, would look eventually to start Musa Diabate, for another former Michigan player. Mm-hmm. And I should ask you about Musa. I didn't even think. I'm so like draft obsessed. All right, I'll ask you about Musa in a minute. But but with the foot speed thing, is that a concern for you? Like when you look at Mara and you think about him playing in the NBA, is that going to be something that teams are going to have to account for, his inability to guard effectively, switch on the perimeter?
I don't think so, because I think that's one of the things Michigan worked at. And I think one of the things that Michigan often like did in general, and this is where you actually saw a lot of, this kind of goes the other way, is going from defense to offense. Mm-hmm. That one of the things that made Adai actually so dominant as well is because they were racing him out to the basket pretty quickly, going from defense to offense, and he's able to just beat everyone down the floor. And that's how he got a lot of easy alley-oops, right? And I think that was you saw that a little bit more going the other way too, but like he's not a liability when it comes to being able to move down the court, despite his size. Not to tangent, the only place that now that I'm just kind of remembering everything that I would say it's both the strength and liability of his is passing the basketball. That's really kind of it. And it's weird because there's some plays he'll have where you're like, that was about the most beautiful pass I've ever seen. And then there's some where you're like, what are you doing, man? Like, what were you even thinking? But like, as in terms of what you're talking about here, just the ability to just get down the court. I mean, yeah, it's a jump from college to NBA. So I guess like we have to see how that would actually work in actual practice. But like that was never a thing that I was ever concerned with, whether it's getting it defensively, whether it was getting from the post out to the perimeter, or it was getting from offense to defense or vice versa. I just did not ever really feel like that was an issue for Adai.
All right, final question here on the prospects, and then I do want to ask about Musa because obviously Musa and the Pistons got into a dust-up this season, so I'm going to ask you about to hold your thought on that for a second. But Hornets are talking a lot about Hornets DNA, and on the last episode of this podcast, Walker and I tried to define what that meant based on interviews from the general manager and the coach when they've talked about Hornets DNA. What are the qualities that make up that identity of a player that they would select in the first round of an NBA draft? So I'm going to give you the check boxes, and then I want you to tell me which of the players that we've talked about here check most of the boxes. They're all going to check a few of the boxes for sure, but which player checks most of the boxes? So here's box number 1 is obsession with daily improvement. Box number 2 is effort and engagement for the full 48 minutes, even when you're on the bench. The third checkbox is defense first, not defense optional. The fourth is high character, low drama. And the fifth is competitive joy. When you hear those, what player of the 3 that we've talked about immediately jumps in your mind?
I mean, it's weird to say, but all of them. I mean,
No, you have to pick one.
I mean, if I had to pick one, because I think, maybe I could click off one for each Merez and Adai. Yaxel fits all of them. I think you said 5 of them, right? Yeah. But like ultimately, like what you just gave sounded like Dusty May's recruiting pitch, and not just his pitch of like, this is what we require at Michigan. So that's why I can say all of them, because I know you want me to pick one, but like they won't take someone at Michigan if they don't have those things. Like and obsessed with daily improvement. He says that all the time. Dusty May does. So when they start off the year with, I can't even remember now, it was 20 something wins, setting a school record. Like, he's sitting there, Dusty May sitting there saying like, well, we that's great. After in a post-game press conference, he's like, that's great. We're obsessed with getting better. We don't care about what just happened. Wake me up when we get to March, essentially, because we need to just keep grinding and keep going. So this has been ingrained. What you've said has been ingrained in all of these players. This is what they lived since they arrived on campus last summer. So it's Yaxel fits all of them, but like, and I couldn't really even tell you how much Morez and Adai, like it's really kind of splitting hairs to even take any of those away. But like I could, there was one where I was like, all right, the engaged on the bench, maybe Merez, but Merez is really stone faced anyway, so it's really hard to tell. With Adai, it was kind of like, okay, he doesn't really play whole games, so I mean he's given it his all, but he's he wasn't out there for 40 minutes or anything like that, like Yaxel tended to be. That's like splitting hairs though. Like generally this is exactly what Dusty May requires of his team.
Oh, that's great insight. All right, final question is going to be on Musa Diabate, a former Michigan player. And I don't know how much you paid attention to him this season or prior to this season as the Hornets have, I mean, he's transformed himself in concert with the Hornets into a force on the offensive rebounds. And he really like represents, if there was a Hornets DNA mascot, it would be absolutely Musa Diabate putting up the moose antlers, okay? But you just mentioned you follow the Pistons. You're a Pistons fan. Musa and the Pistons, they got into a dust-up. Jalen Duren mushed him in the face. And Musa, he's just like his eyes glazed over. He went to another world, got into a fight. Were you conflicted in that moment? Where you're like, oh, man, I love Moose, but he's going after my team?
A little bit. I didn't see it live. I saw it after the fact. And it was kind of like, number one, I had a flashback to the Malice, right at the Palace.
I almost got there.
Which I did see that live, not in person, but I did see that all transpire on TV as it happened. But yeah, I mean, I have this problem with not just Musa, right? Like just watching Franz Wagner and go nuts. I mean, that's not physical, but like he just, it's hard when you're watching a former player of Michigan playing against the Pistons and they go off, right? But yeah, like I was more surprised because it's hard to really remember the year that Musa was in Ann Arbor, because that was just kind of it was a decent year. I think that was Juwan Howard's best, but like the Juwan Howard era is so forgettable. And I think everyone's tried to wipe it from their collective memory. But I remember of Musa was he was just so like genteel. So to see him, like, if you were to tell me a former Wolverine got into it with a Piston, like in a game, I'd be like, so what did Mo Wagner do? Right? Like that would be like what I would have thought. I would
That's
not have
crazy.
Musa. So that kind of like I honestly, and I mean this really happened. When I saw that happened, I watched it and I was like, that's Musa Diabate. I'm like, is that the same Musa Diabate? And I Googled to make sure that it was, because I was so shocked that we even saw him getting physical like that, just not who he was.
That's so funny, because his hot-headedness was a storyline last season that, like, loved to see the passion, but maybe we got to figure out a way to like rein that in, focus it so that it didn't cost him any more games. And even after that, I mean, you saw a few teams try to like press him, and in the rematch late in the season, I think the Pistons tried to do that, tried to bait him into going another couple rounds to get him flustered. And he did sort of control it a little bit, but you could see that look in his eye. I was like, I kind of want to do it again. But it's funny to hear you say that, because we have seen Musa Diabate transformed even in the short amount of time that he's been with the Charlotte Hornets. And for him to remain in this lineup as they, get ready to be playoff contenders, he's going to have to continue to transform his game. And I think I think it's great to hear when a guy is not the same in college and is different in the NBA, because that means that they're focused on evolving and becoming something different. So that is fantastic insight. So much of that insight you can find on the Locked On Wolverines podcast. Go over there, Hornets fans. These are three guys that are absolutely going to be in the pocket of Jeff Peterson as he makes his decision on the 2 first-round picks, 14 and 18. So check out Locked On Wolverines for more on these players. Isaiah, thank you so much for the time and the insights. You were excellent.
Of course, my pleasure.
You'll hear more from Walker and I coming up next week. We'll continue our draft discussions. Many tough decisions ahead for Jeff Peterson. We'll cover it all here on Locked On Hornets. For Walker, I'm Doug saying go Hornets, go America. Let's swarm Charlotte. See you next week.